Happiness is freedom. Freedom is having the choice to spend your time doing things that inspire you. Most people want freedom, but many people don't have a clear objective, a roadmap, or a strategy to achieve it. Everyone deserves to live an inspired and free life. I believe that when we're free and able to focus on our most meaningful work, we simply become better human beings. We can give more, care more, support more, and love more. I'm an investor, a trader, and an entrepreneur, and I get to spend every day doing what I love. At the age of 29 years old, I became financially free, and since then my mission has been to help and inspire other people to achieve the same so that they can be more of who they really want to be. Always Free is about having a free mind, being free to question the status quo, free to take risks, free to say no, free to say yes, free from social idealisms, opinions and beliefs, free to disobey, and free to wake up every day and spend your time to make a difference that inspires you. You can have it all. Living a life designed by you isn't a stroke of luck or a result of circumstance. It's a choice. So if you want to learn how to become free and live an inspired life, join me for the #1 show for financial empowerment and wealth creation as I share my insights, tips, strategies and advice on what allowed me to be always free. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jason Graystone. Well, welcome to the Always Free show. Welcome back. If it's the first time you're listening, this is the #1 show for financial empowerment and wealth creation. And if you've always been here, welcome back. We're in for a treat this week because I've brought on Eleanor. Thanks for coming on. Eleanor's our community manager. Some of you recognize her or know her as Tough Buddy or Eleanor Hanley. And over the last few years, we've been working together building the Tears of Freedom program, the community, the Always Free community. Many of the kind of successes behind that community have been aided by the help of Eleanor. So she plays a very important role in our community because we'll talk a little bit about why that's so important in a minute. But what we really want to get out of this session today is talking about, we've had a lot of conversations with people to do with money, right? Mm-hmm. We've hosted how many strategy sessions?
Oh gosh, too many.
Yeah, right. Hundreds of strategy sessions over the last few years. And we've met some incredible people, diverse people, right? From
not one the same.
Yeah, just like earning, no money to people earning millions and being literally depressed, right? And what we want to get out of this session is really just talking about the diversity there, what the common themes are, what's important, what's not important, and what's holding people back and what's not holding people back, and also talk a little bit around the values around money, because I know, Eleanor, before we started working together, you was like one of the kind of, you're young, you was going into the world and you thought, I'll check this trading thing out, and you wanted to get rich quick. Tell us a little bit about that.
I literally knew nothing about money. I just remember from about 14 waiting until I hit 16 so I could get any job so that I could get more food at school, because we suffered with money. So I used to be hungry quite a lot, so money was always in my mind. And I ended up dropping out of my A-levels to go and pursue being a full-time waitress, and lost my job in COVID. Obviously, restaurants got hit hard, and then fell into this kind of I felt like it was the end. KFC wouldn't accept me, McDonald's wouldn't accept me. I had 3 years of kitchen experience under my belt, and that's when I started looking into literally everything that I could do, and then fell into one of those schemes. And fortunately, only lost 500 quid, but it could have been about 20 grand.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then obviously, I kind of just packed my bags and looked for an opportunity.
Yeah, right. It's interesting because I came from a similar upbringing where money was there was no money. Mm-hmm. And I think what we've seen is your values come from voids. And if you perceive to have had no money and you perceive that to be a negative thing, you either go one way or the other. You either hate money yourself or you're very appreciative of it when you get it. And I think that's kind of that transition you made, right? So you might have blown £500, but you're very aware of the importance of what money could do. Mm-hmm. And then what happened? You then saw the light.
I hit rock bottom. I remember signing up to get benefits, and I thought are you actually joking? Like, this can't be it.
Can't be
There's
life.
literally no way that I'm going to live on like £300 a month. And I could see that people were doing like these amazing things. So I started like trying to chase someone else's plan and someone else's goal and dreams and whatever, which is how I fell into that scheme. But then I realized that, okay, people are doing this, but they're doing this the right way.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I'd been researching a couple of people. I'd been reading books. Daniel Priestley's book, The Entrepreneurial Revolution, was the first book that I read. And I was fortunate enough to have Lydia take me in for like 9 months in London, like sleeping on like a wooden layla or whatever it was. Bad back problems came from that. And then like give me like £200 a month to just get some experience and introduce me to her network. So I really had to leave everything that I knew and move to this like huge, like the biggest city, from living in like a rural area, and just leave everything behind and just be like, I have to do this. I have no other choice. I can't live like this.
Yeah, and you went from like chasing money to accepting you're going to have no money, but you're going to get the experience and play a bit of a longer game.
Yeah, because when I got introduced to you, I had an interview with another guy, and I was battling between taking like this really high corporate wage with like zero growth or opportunities, or taking like a slightly less wage but for way more opportunities, but that I couldn't live on, but that I knew that I could grow.
Yeah.
So it was about like kind of deciding it, and that was the first time in my life that I ever decided like, okay, but like money is very valuable, but you can't buy these kind of opportunities, and this is how I'm going to have to build it.
Awesome. So we've as I say, we've spoken to since then. Just to kind of give you an insight, Eleanor looks after our communities, and we talk about business a lot on this show. And one of the things that I always say is we don't like run ads, and we're not like a cold marketing company. And a lot of people ask how we have a successful business, and a lot of it is down to community. A lot of it is, I've said on this show just last week, it's about having a valuable product that can actually help someone, and then going to champion and become customer obsessed, like really champion the people that are willing to put themselves out there and go through the program and do the work. So a major part of that is having someone who can champion that, keep engagement high, keep morale high, because essentially when someone's on your program, they're doing something that they don't naturally want to do. It's like otherwise they would do it, they wouldn't have the problem. So it's up to us to then make them make the most of it, and that really comes down to a lot of accountability, and that's something I want to talk about, because one of the things from having a community manager and working closely with Eleanor is we've established that accountability, obviously it sounds obvious, but accountability is key, particularly when it comes to wealth building, because first of all, people don't have, like, they don't believe that they can be wealthy, they don't believe, that certain things are possible. And one of Eleanor's main focuses is ensuring that people sign up for accountability sessions so that we can keep that momentum going. But we found that even that, right, is tough, because people don't want to put themselves out there.
They need the accountability to get the accountability.
They need accountability to get accountability, right. Yeah. And what we're trying to do is actually get them to put themselves out there, put their goals on the line, open up in front of everyone, and kind of put a stake in the ground and say, this is what I'm going to do. In front of people, and that's, if you're in an uncomfortable situation, that's such an important thing to do. But what we find is people are reluctant to do it. Those who do it, they go on and they do really well, like some of our Peter Stone and people who just constantly put themselves out there. Why do you think people are so reluctant to do it? Like, you've had a lot of conversations with people who...
Yeah, and I can also speak from experience. It's terrifying to be vulnerable. And it definitely comes from a judgment point of view. There's so much information out there, and a lot of the time when you're searching for this information, you'll come across the higher level stuff first, like trading. Most people get into trading first, do it wrong, and then think it doesn't work. So then when they're in a community like where people are doing it right, they almost feel a bit vulnerable because they've done it wrong. Yeah. So they end up just kind of halting instead of accepting that they have to be vulnerable in order to move up the line of like the chain, really. So I think it's a vulnerability and a judgment thing. People are really like nervous around that sort of area.
Definitely. Do you know what I've heard though? I heard a lot of people say, I don't feel like I'm good enough to be in the group because I'm not like a high achiever. They've got this kind of perception that everyone's a massive high achiever in the group, and that stops them wanting to be like part of it or putting themselves out in there in the first place. I think it's important to understand that when you're in a community of like-minded people, it becomes the norm a little bit. Like, there's a lot of authors in our group, right? Published authors, which is, and when you're surrounded by people like that, it almost becomes, oh, everyone's doing that, but it's not. It's such a minority of people that actually achieve certain things, and just because you're in a close-knit group, it doesn't mean that that's normal. It still means that you should celebrate every single achievement and milestone that you're able to reach. What are some of the objections that you've heard as to why people don't want to, be held accountable or
a lot of it
do the work?
A lot of it's time. That's like the biggest thing that I get is time and vulnerability and not sure if they're going to click with someone. And I was like, but it's kind of like a dating scene, right? You've got to try a few people before you find who's like working. And like you said, it's not everybody's like doing what everybody thinks they're doing, and everyone started from a certain position, and it's not something that you should judge yourself or compare yourself against, because I know it's cliche, but you should only compare yourself to yourself and what you were like last year. And I fell victim to that, and then I give myself a bit of credit, like, okay, I'm here now, like I wasn't here last year. And I think people really need to hone in and focus on that specifically. But that is definitely like the biggest obstacle.
And again, it comes down to values as well, right? Because
exactly.
they've got some. We meet people who you can very clearly see that they don't have the self-worth to go after something or put themselves out there, or even just, the simplest of tasks is down to the fact that it's just not high enough on their values, and they're trying to be someone that they think they should be, which is why they're doing the program in the first place. Some of the people in our program have just realised, I don't actually want to be wealthy. I just want to I want to work a 9 to 5 and be told what to do. And it's refreshing just to have someone come through and come out the other end to know that. Like, because at least they're closer to themselves than they were before, right? So, values on wealth building. Based on all the conversations you've had, because what Eleanor does is she essentially has conversations with people who want to join our program, our Tears of Freedom program, who want some training and some guidance and get their feet a little bit wet. And she has calls with people, right? And, she does accountability sessions and things like that. She speaks to a lot of our community. What's the most common excuse that comes up when, around why they can't do it or why they can't do the program?
A lot of it is partner. So partner, that's actually a big one. I'm not sure if my partner would approve of this. My partner wants to do this. What if my partner doesn't like this? That's a big thing. Also, like I said before, time. People just don't want to find the time or commit the time or think they don't have the time. Yeah. And I remember when I was saying this to Anshu, when I was saying, like, look at your phone, go through your screen time and break it down and put some locks on, and she saved like an hour of our time, like every day. So like you can find it, but that's a big excuse. Yeah. And then obviously finding the money and having the money and wanting to commit.
Seeing the return on the money,
exactly,
right? Seeing the value.
So it's exactly that. And I know it's very easy to look at someone and be like, oh, well, they've achieved it. Like, I obviously can't, but you totally can. And it's like, it's such a big obstacle that people just, they value money the wrong way. I was saying before, like value opportunities over income. Yeah. So
time is obviously always going to come up. And ultimately, the irony is the program will buy you time, right? That's essentially what we're doing here. But the first one, which was asking for permission. We was talking about this with Niall, where Niall said, he had the kids, had the marriage, had the house, had the job, and then he sat down and felt very, very resentful that he wasn't at some place that he thought he'd be. Yeah. Because he ticked all the boxes that society say he should do. And what we were talking about is if you have to ask permission for your partner, like from your partner, to live your blip of a life, when you get down the road, assuming that you want to be with that person for a long time, surely you want the best for each other. And surely you've agreed that, getting our finances in order, becoming financially free is in the best interest of me. And yes, it's the best interest of you. So by having to ask permission to take an action that might be outside of your comfort zone. You know, it's uncomfortable to spend some money on a program because essentially you've got to do some work. But what you end up with is 5 years down the line, you're still in the same position. And then, I mean, how many people have we spoke to like that are still, you know, we have people that finally go into it and they're like, oh, I should have done it.
Sometimes it's like, oh, I've been doing this for 15 years. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
15 years?
The trader guy, right?
Yeah.
There was a trader. I've been trading for 16 years. Eleanor said, oh, perhaps do you like it? And I never really thought about whether I like it or not. Well, do you think that's why you've been doing it for 16 years with no success? But ultimately, you know, you're going to be resentful and you will start to look at your wife or your husband or your kids as you'll just think, you'll blame them. You'll blame them and you'll become bitter, you'll become snappy and you'll have resentment. And that's ultimately what we want to get away from. And your third point, which was...
Time.
Time was the second, and then you said money. Money is the perception of the value. So yes, it's uncomfortable to outlay a ton of money when it's quite intangible. The results are intangible, right? Because it's up to you to do some work. But you think something's expensive when you don't believe in the result. And I'm afraid we've got such a proven model at Tears of Freedom that if you don't get the result, it is just down to you. So, you know, you're really saying, I don't believe I'm worth whatever that program costs. That's basically what it boils down to, right? So, talking about communities then, because Eleanor's our community manager. When it comes to managing a community, we see all different types of people and we see all walks of life, every different situation, but everyone's got the same goal of financial freedom. What is, in your opinion, important to keep a community engaged, make sure that they're on the same level, you know, and kind of encourage and blow growth into that community, or because what we try and do is make the community self-fulfilling, right? It's like a flywheel effect. So what would you say is important?
Trust is a big thing.
Trust.
I think trust is like the number one thing. Obviously, going back to people feeling vulnerable, trust.
You have to respect that,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. And when they trust you and they know your story, like for when I did my introduction and people were like, oh, okay, she's like not some like Harvard graduate that just like got pulled out the oven. Like I actually have a story. There's a reason I'm here. And you start to realize that the whole community does. That is like the trust element. So I think when you've got people who you start to build quite a close relationship with, again, I'll use Anshu as an example. She was terrified to do an accountability session with you, but because I've been building a relationship with her over 2 years, she trusted me enough that this was going to benefit her. And those people who then put out into the group and it comes like a shepherd guiding the sheep and everyone else is like, oh my God, I got to do that as well. Like, look how much feedback they got, and then trying to, you know, get everyone together. And I say to people, introduce yourself. It doesn't matter where you've come from or what you do or how meaningless you think your story is. You will relate to someone in the group and encourage other people to share as well. And then you'll see who's on the same wavelength. And that is so important. Like, it really is.
Yeah, vulnerabilities, like the values of the company are transparency, contribution and growth. And the transparency piece is being vulnerable, you know, introducing yourself as the idiot, you know, and that's exactly what I try and do. I try and do that myself. I've posted out publicly my video of when I tried to first do social media and all that kind of stuff. And we always say, every time we let people into our group that we are very protective over, by the way, we say, introduce yourself. You're going to get the most out of this group if you are vulnerable, lay your cards on the table, be open and raw and honest, and it will only get better from there. And that's when you'll be able to have that contribution. People will contribute to you and everyone will grow. And I agree, it's one of the most important things in a community like ours to have that vulnerability. So that's a great point. There's people in our group that have had tattoos of the logo, right? There's people who believe so strongly in our community that they are now selling our programs, and it's not a Ponzi scheme or like some pyramid scheme. And people don't believe me when they say, "Oh, you're paying them; they're working for you." You know, it's really not. We've got such a tight community that people feel compelled to share their story of how it's transformed their life. And what's your opinion on, you know, how do you look after those people? How do you nurture those? How do we make sure that we're getting fair exchange with those as well and rewarding those people.
A lot of it is, like I said before, just having conversations. I think just lending someone an ear and just encouraging them and seeing how they got on with things. So like if they told you like a month ago they were going to do this, and then follow up and be like, how did that go, and you're genuinely just asking, like just to see how it went. And then if it went well or if it went wrong, okay, well, tell the group and then see what everyone else thinks about that. And if they've done like a massive achievement, bigging them up and making them feel good, because it's important to celebrate something, no matter how small it is as well. Like for me, when I did my accountability, on my sheet was to like drink one less Red Bull a week. Like, something so minimal, but it's important. Yeah. And people think, oh, maybe I have to like write a book in a week. No, like just like even make the bed, like just put something on. So just, having conversations, bigging people up and encouraging them to continue going forward and praise them for, even being here. Like it's a big thing. Even to get into the group is like a huge thing.
Absolutely.
Because you've took the leap and you've seen something in yourself and you've seen something that you want to change, right?
Yeah, and that is the objection. Like some people don't want to join the group because they don't feel like they're good enough to be in the group. We want people like that in the group because they're the people we can help the most, for sure. And definitely champion them. If they're doing something well and they're doing it good, tell them to tell the group. If they did something bad and they feel ashamed, tell them to tell the group, because it will just become a cycle of contribution and growth. And ultimately trust, which is, going down to the values, and we'll be completely transparent about this. When we employ a team member, again, which we're very careful over, we employ them on values. And if the values don't align, literally when we took Eleanor, she filled out a whole value assessment form, right?
I was terrified.
and we basically see if there's a match, see if there's a fit there, because if there is, then you're working for your own values to give us what we want, and you get more of what you want. So it's incredible. And when you're aligned like that, it just spills out into a community, and I think people can feel it and sense it. Hence the reason, we've got that flywheel effect going on in the community right now. What would be the number one, let's just say, what's the number one excuse for, aside from time, what's the number one excuse for not doing the work once they're in
Overwhelm.
Overwhelm. That's a great one. And
Overwhelm. I'll tell you what it is as well, because people, they kind of, they see what can be achieved. Yeah. They see the modules, they see the lessons, and they see the information. And instead of going through it step by step, they try and rush to something that they're initially interested in, go, OMG, and then pull out and then go, no, it's too much. It's like, but have you actually sat down and done it from the welcome point and took step by steps? Have you spoken to anybody? Have you came to me? Have you, and it's overwhelm. Yeah. It really is. And I think they get into it and they're like, okay, I'm actually here now. I don't know what to do. Yeah. To start it, I'll start it on Monday because people start things on Monday. Yeah. I'll start it on New Year's because people start. It's like that.
And I think there's some accountability there as well. Like if they start, that means they've got to keep going. Yeah. They're accountable. But if they don't start, then they
I'll
can't.
Do it next week.
Do it next week. So there's one guy in particular that springs to mind who's now listening to my podcast for the third time. But hasn't started the program. And he's had the program for a year, and you think, how about don't listen to the podcast because you've got the actual stuff, you've got the actual thing. Let's get through that. And again, you can almost see that it's like, maybe it's a little bit that if he starts, he's in there, and then it's all on him.
I think it's a self-worth thing. I get a lot of people say, well, what if I don't get it? And I was like, but you can't not get it. You will get it. And if you do struggle, you've got a 24-hour support system. Yeah. We're there's people all over the world doing this. You've got myself, you've got you, you've got the whole team. You're not going to struggle. Yeah. But they just have it in their head, which is this whole self-worth. What if I struggle? Oh my God, I've spent this money. I don't want to do it wrong. My partner's going to hate me. So self-worth.
Amazing. So talking about partners, I think we touched on it earlier, but I think it's important to get your partner on board. I think it's important to both be on the journey together, because ultimately if one of you is in charge of, or not just in charge, it's okay for one of you to be the breadwinner or whatever, but if you're not empowered around money and you've got and you're completely blind, and the other guy or girl's earning the money and you're like, I've got no idea about money and I don't know how wealth is created, that's codependency. You're then in a position where you need the person, right? And that will breed resentment. because you feel like, oh God, I want a different partner, but I'll stay with this one because at least I know the money's there and I don't have to worry about that, and I need rescuing and all this crap. That's what we see as well, and you've had conversations where people have had to ask permission for their partner and stuff. The people who have gone through it together as a partner group, have you seen?
Oh, it's actually incredible.
Yeah.
It's like the honeymoon phase all over again, but like with life, you know? It's like, it's actually
geeking out on finances. Yeah.
And I see the objections between people who don't do it together either. Like if I take, for example, my relationship, like I remember before I obviously started doing it with you, I would give my partner money to put into Bet365 to bet on the football because I had no idea what I was doing. And then now I started this, he was like, can you put some money into an ISA for us? I'm like, no, I won't. Go and learn it. So you do see it, like you really do. And I can see the growth in a relationship and the growth in someone's life, especially when they're doing it with someone else, because you've got someone doing the exact same thing as you that you already know. You're in the same household, and then you're doing this together, and you can catch up with each other, and you kind of push each other. And if you're competitive with one another, that's even better.
Exactly, yeah. And most couples will be competitive. They'll have a competitive level of competition going on. And I encourage everyone, everyone, just get your family on board. Niall said it last week on the show that he has a whiteboard and they set goals together as a family. What a great activity to do, bringing it out and making it fun and opening up about money that's known to be this dirty topic that you're not meant to talk about or ask people what they earn and all this crazy stuff. Ask people what they earn. Ask people what they earn. Talk about money. Talk about it in your household like it's a normal topic because it's so important. And the last thing you want is your kids or someone you love to have like a downer on money or feel like they can't bring it up or talk about it as it's some dirty subject. And talking of that, have we had anyone who's had like money is a dirty thing, I'm not worthy of money?
Yeah.
And what kind of goes through their head? What's the conversations?
Well, I speak from experience. My dad, he terrified of the stuff, but wants it, but is terrified of it, but has none of it. And it's like, and I remember him saying to me, like, just climb the corporate ladder, don't do anything risky. He won't touch risk, like risk is not a thing. So I grew up quite, I don't know, stalemated almost with this idea. And he still is to this way that money is dirty and people do horrible things with it. And I was like, yeah, but it's a tool, right? Like a hammer, you can hammer a nail in, or you can hammer someone's head. Like it just depends on how you use it. Like it's a tool. So a lot of people, I think it comes, like you said, from experience. I just happened to go the other way with it because when I thought about money growing up, it was, who can I help with this? Charities can I help with this? What can I do? What can I do? Whereas if people are following a certain environment or a certain atmosphere where they've grown up without money and they've seen people just go out and squalor it or have had people spend it on bad things, then they think it's evil. So it's a perception thing, and it really is. It's like, it's a tool. You need to look at it as a tool, and that's it. It's there for you and what you want to do, not what you think it's going to guide you towards. So I think, it brings out the real you. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. I agree 100% with that, and it's very, very true. What I'd love to talk about a little bit is your own journey, because you at the beginning of this show you said you grew up with no money and you grew up with very little and a dad who wasn't really pushing you to the limits because he was scared
he was
to push you to the limit, and you had a little dabble with a gamble, and then you was kind of disempowered around money to a degree, and now you're in a different position, right? So now you're
moved out.
You got your own place. Within a very short period of time, you've got investments.
You've travelled.
Yeah. You've got savings. You've moved out and got your own place. So you've seen the whole transition. And what I'm interested in, you're still relatively very young, and
relatively says.
Well. Depends who's watching, right? Hopefully we've got loads of 15, 16-year-olds watching this show because they're the ones that really, it's important to talk to. But you're 22, right? 22. So 19, I think, when you started working.
19. It was 2020, August, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's been nearly getting on 3 years. So 2020, August.
Yeah, so 2020, and a lot's changed. It's dramatically shifted, and a lot of that has been to do with your network.
Yes.
Your community?
I think that was the first thing that dramatically shifted, and that was like the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. Like I did have to put on a certain sort of facade, because I too struggled with self-worth,
Right.
and I was like, what am I doing? Like, what
So you didn't feel like you was good enough to be
not
in the
at all.
community?
I remember having like breakdowns and things, thinking like I'm gonna disappoint everyone, and I still get it to this point now that I'm still sometimes like, oh, I'm literally gonna disappoint everyone. I don't know why I'm here. I should just pull out now. Because I remember said that to you when I hit 22. I had like this whole like breakdown over it, which was ridiculous, because I know that's not me, but it still crops up sometimes. You know, even if you've worked on it, it's still something that crops up because you're still human. And I literally remember saying to Lydia, like, I cannot do this. I have no experience. I've got no qualifications. Why am I here? What is going on? And I just remember relaxing into it and just being like, just talk. Like, you've researched this, you've done this, and luckily I had age on my side, so people appreciated that I didn't know much, and I was eager to just learn, and I was taking advice, I was taking in mistakes that I'd made and working on them. I wasn't like retaliating like, oh, well, that's not true. It was like, oh, okay, I'll work on that next time, and I would actually work on it. People would see the improvement, and then I'd get the opportunity, and that was so important.
And that's the key, the trust that you've worked on it and got the result. And, you know, young or not, people really listen to Eleanor in our community, and they really respect her. We get tons of feedback, great reviews. You know, people go out their way to message me and say Eleanor's a great asset to your business, and you know, it's fantastic. But it really reinforces my belief in the importance of having someone in the community that builds something. The community is an asset, which then promotes the business, and that's, you know, it's self-fulfilling. So awesome. So lots of transformation, 2 years, big difference, and you make a great point about, you know, not being ready. You're 22, I'm 42, I'm still winging it, I'm still making it up, and I might be a little bit wiser in terms of experiences and how I know myself a little bit better because of that 20-year difference, but we're still like not where we want to be, and humans never are where they want to be, because the biggest, like, one of the biggest, like, core drivers is like uncertainty. You just want to you want to test stuff, you want to go and have another experience or learn something new, and the more you do that, the more it opens up this world of a new world, and then you're at the bottom again, and so on and so on and so on. So we're all winging it. We're all making it up as we go along. I am. And I think a big part of success is just knowing that and accepting it. And
trusting yourself.
Yeah, just being happy that that is the case, and just enjoying every day. And when you wake up and you're feeling a bit crap, well, I woke up. You know, I woke up and I've got another day to figure this thing out and see where I want to go. That's there's a guy who I saw on social media, I can't remember his name, but he was interviewing this couple, and he said, if I give you 10 million...
I saw this.
Right.
Yeah.
He says, if I give you a million on Monday morning, would you be happy? And they're like, yeah. And he says, so there's nothing I could say to get you down. And they're like, no, I'd be over the moon. And then he says, okay, if I gave you a million, actually make it 10 million, but the only catch is you don't get to wake up on Tuesday morning. And they say, and he says, would you take it? And they're like, well, no way. They turn it down within a split second. And he says, so at this point, you're saying waking up is worth more than a million or even 10 million. Yeah. And they're like, wow, yeah, I never thought of it like that. And so he says, so why don't you feel that way when you wake up in the morning? And when you think of it, it's like, wow, you know, waking up is more important, because guess what? If you don't achieve everything you want to achieve that day, you get to wake up the next day and try again and again and again. And just that waking up and being allowed to even try, that's life. Like, to me, that's life. I don't care what comes at me every day. I'd rather have the struggle than not, and you know, be dead. You know, that's we're alive, and we should just make the most of it and understand that there's no end goal. There's no end goal. All it is just learning to love and enjoy your life. So I think that's a great way to kind of start rounding this off. It really embodies everything we talked about in our community, what we talk about with our group, and what I'd love Eleanor to comment on is, if you are thinking about starting something new or putting your foot in the water and getting involved with a group where you have to level up a little bit, because you hear talk all the time about you've got to get outside your comfort zone, you've got to ditch people who aren't serving you and get into groups that are going to level you up, or if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And you're one of those people who knows that you're looking around and your friends are going out drinking every night, or trying to get you to go to the club, or try and get you prostitutes, or whatever it might be, right? And you know that you're better. Something's holding you back, and there's people around you that are holding you back. Eleanor, what would you say to someone who's thinking about joining a community of like-minded people? They're a bit fearful about not being good enough or whatever. What would you say?
Just do it.
That's
it, yeah. Just do it. Talk to people. That's the first thing I did. I didn't just throw myself into it. I kind of was like, okay, you've got a phone, right? You've got social media. Find someone who's doing it and just send them a message. Yeah. Like, they're not going to judge you. And if they don't reply, so what? Find someone else. Like, it's a huge thing, Like, you can just contact anyone and talk to them and see what they think and be vulnerable, because if people are out there and they are wanting to help people like Jason, most likely they're going to give you good advice and they're going to be nice, right? Just talk to someone and just do it. That's it.
Cool. And when they get in the group, what
introduce yourself. Yeah. It's like the big thing. Please introduce yourself. That is like, it sounds like so
small. It sounds
like
it does,
nothing. Doesn't it? Like, oh, hi, I'm from Newcastle. No, it's like just putting yourself out there. There's so many people in there now doing all sorts of different type of things with all sorts of different type of income and interests and whatnot. We've got like tree surgeons in there, all the way from like to doctors to people who are like running like postmen or things. Like someone will have a relation to you in some manner who might be too shy to come out yet. So if you say something, they go, oh, okay, I'll come out as well. Yeah. Right? And you get a relation for who is on the same wavelength, and that's so important.
And we've been blown away by like just people who do introductions who then message and say, wow, that was really that's a big milestone in themselves, because they've actually, first time on their life, verbalized their own thoughts about themselves. Not many people introduce themselves these days. I do it every day on this thing, or I go on a podcast, and it's become normal. But actually, when you think about it, someone who's never introduced themselves properly and expressed to a group, like sold themselves to a group, that's what you're doing. You're selling yourself to a group. That's a very powerful exercise that shouldn't be, just brushed to the curb. That's a really powerful achievement, and it will only get better. Your life will change from that moment if you're thinking about doing that. So, incredible. I think that's really, really valuable. And on that note, we have got a community, and you should join it. And the links are in the description. And as soon as they get into our group, what should they do?
Introduce yourself, add me, and I'll send you a message, and let's get the ball rolling.
Yeah, look, we're very, very strict about our group, right? Here's how it works. Every Sunday, we let in about 15, 20 people, that's it. And that's what we've been doing for the last 3 years. And we've got people on the waiting list, over 1,000 people on the waiting list, some have been on there for 3 years, because we don't believe they're right for the group. But if you're listening to this and you've listened to this point in this video, in this particular session, I know that you're thinking, this is definitely for me, right? All the other people that are watching this show who aren't interested in this, they've left. But you're still here. So we're going to let you in. All you need to do is click on the link in this description. You'll get straight into the group. And watch out for a message, a DM from Eleanor, and she'll tell you how to get the most out of it. And if you don't trust her by now, well, you should. So that's it. Until next time, thanks, Eleanor, for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll see you inside the Facebook group. Take care.